My name is Heather Miller. I'm 32 years old, and exactly 1 month ago, my entire family decided I wasn't worth keeping around. It wasn't a screaming match, no confrontation, just a cold little message in our family WhatsApp group. It read, "After careful consideration, we think it's best if Heather steps back from client-facing responsibilities for now." No explanation, no private call, just a digital shove out the door. And then, a thumbs up from my aunt, as if they'd just settled what to eat for dinner. I stared at the message for 17 minutes, didn't cry, didn't argue, just typed. Understood. I'll respect that decision and step away from the family fund, too, wishing everyone continued success. Then I put my phone on silent, closed my laptop, and got up to make tea. What they didn't know was that I wasn't bluffing. I had the legal right, the access codes, and the receipts. That night, I pulled my $4.2 million out of our $12 million Miller family fund, plus $1.7 million in attributable growth, every dollar meticulously tracked. And I did it with the calm of someone who had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. At 2:15 a.m., my phone lit up. 89 missed calls. By sunrise, the fund was frozen. The bank had flagged the transaction as suspicious activity. My father left me a voicemail. And this time, his voice didn't carry the usual confidence. It was raw, like someone slowly realizing they'd made a fatal error. "Heather, what happened? The banks locked the entire account. What did you do?" I didn't respond right away. I just made coffee, sat by the window in my Back Bay brownstone, and let the silence wrap around me like a blanket. They had wanted me gone, so I left. But that was before they realized everything else I had. Let's rewind. You see, the Millers aren't just any family in Boston. We are the Millers, financial royalty in New England. If you believe the articles, Miller Financial Advisors has been around for 3 generations, started by my grandfather after Witu, built on grit, charm, and a knack for picking winners. My father, Robert Miller, expanded it into a multi-million-dollar empire. Picture dark wood-paneled offices, golf memberships, and framed photos with senators and governors. My mother, Diana. She played the perfect corporate wife, effortless parties, flawless table settings, pies that sealed million-dollar deals. She never worked at the firm, but wielded power through presentation. A subtle smile here, a whispered comment there. I grew up in a 5-bedroom colonial surrounded by success. Marble countertops, Eames chairs, family portraits where everyone smiled, perfectly composed. But behind those smiles was a clear order of importance. Men first, legacy second, women, somewhere between the artwork and the flowers on the table. Even when I was a child, I knew I saw things differently. While my cousins played with dolls or iPads, I flipped through the Wall Street Journal. I'd sit in the corner during my father's business calls, pretending to do homework while secretly absorbing everything. By the time I was 10, I was asking questions that made my father pause mid-sentence, and that, I now realize, was when the subtle resentment began. Smart daughters don't make proud fathers. They make threatened ones. I graduated top of my class from Wharton double major in finance and economics. I remember thinking, now they'll see me differently. Now they'll take me seriously. Wrong. When I joined Miller Financial at 24, my father assigned me to work under Jake, my cousin, who barely scraped by at a state college, who once thought liquidity had something to do with a sports drink. "Jake's been here longer," my father said with a condescending smile and a hand on my shoulder. He had been there 7 months longer. For 8 years. I played the long game. Quiet, focused, strategic. While Jake left early to golf with clients, I stayed behind tweaking models and optimizing portfolios. While the rest of the family posted vacation pics from the Hamptons, I was on Zoom with startup founders in Tel Aviv and Sao Paulo. I built a secret portfolio on the side, entirely independent. I drove a 6-year-old car. I wore simple blazers. I didn't flaunt. I didn't demand. But I delivered. My division alone generated 62% of company profits last quarter. Clients came to the firm asking for me. Not the Miller name. Me. But at the monthly family meetings, when I handed out detailed reports and growth forecasts, it was always the same voices speaking over me. "That's all very technical. Heather," Uncle Richard would say, "what does your father think?" "You're too smart for your own good," my mother would whisper in the hallway. "Men don't like that. You need to let your father lead." Even when I implemented a new strategy that brought a 14% return on the Westfield portfolio in just 1/4 quadruple, our benchmark, my father's reaction. "You did that without authorization. That's not how we do things here." Except I had told him. He just wasn't listening. He was too busy watching golf on the TV in his office. That Tuesday was the last straw. I showed up early to prep for a major meeting our biggest client, the Donovans. But when I got there, they were already seated in the conference room. My father, Jake, 2 other family partners. My slides, my portfolio projections, on the screen. And Jake smiling, walking them through my strategy like he'd stayed up all night perfecting it himself. Through the glass wall, I watched my father nod along, offering the occasional excellent work, or this is just what we needed. I didn't walk in. I didn't cause a scene. I just stood there, frozen in place, watching my career being paraded around like a show pony. After the meeting, I checked my inbox. Nothing. No apology. No explanation. Just another email thread from Aunt Patricia about the upcoming family retreat. I wasn't included. That night, I stared at my laptop for hours. Didn't blink. Didn't move. Just stared. Years of sacrifice, of being the good soldier, of hoping that results would speak for themselves. And for what? I opened the drawer of my desk and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was the pocket watch my grandfather used to carry. I was the only grandchild he ever gave one to. He once told me, "This family will always underestimate you. That's your advantage. Just don't forget who you are." I hadn't. But they had. When the WhatsApp message came 3 days later, it didn't surprise me. Not really. It just confirmed what I'd already known. They never saw me as an equal. Only a tool. But what happens when the tool walks away and takes the blueprint with her? Because this time, I wasn't just stepping away. I was taking back what was mine. And what happened next? Let's just say, the Millers finally realized what Heather Miller was really worth. Growing up, a Miller meant growing up surrounded by illusion, one carefully polished and presented to the world. From the outside, we were a perfect American family. From the inside, it was a kingdom, and my father was king. He ran Miller Financial Advisors like a private empire, passed down from my grandfather, the man who built everything from nothing after the war. That story, the rags to riches narrative, was repeated like gospel in every holiday toast, every client dinner, every press interview. We're not just a company, we're a legacy. That's what my father would say. But legacies don't always reward those who work the hardest. Sometimes, they just reward those who were born with the right last name and the right gender. Our offices were downtown Boston, in a building that used to be a bank fitting, really, mahogany-paneled boardrooms, a marble-floored lobby. The receptionist always greeted me with the same line, like a script. "Good morning, Miss Miller. Coffee's ready in your office." She smiled, but her eyes said it all. "You're here early. Again." I always was. The real problem wasn't that my work was invisible. It was that they saw it and claimed it. I'd present a full portfolio redesign that boosted a struggling account. My father would walk into a meeting, wave at the charts, and say, Let's all thank the team for making this happen. That team was me. I wasn't bitter at first. I thought, maybe this is just how it works. You keep your head down, prove your worth, and eventually, they'll stop seeing you as a little girl playing in their world. But that never happened. Instead, I watched as Jake stumbled forward, year after year, failing upward. My father praised him for ideas I'd already presented. Uncle Richard backed him because he's a straight shooter. Aunt Patricia pushed him forward because he's a Miller man. And me? I was a bit intense, a little too sharp, not quite in tune with the culture of the firm. Culture. That word hung over every decision, every rejection, every closed-door meeting I wasn't invited to. The Miller culture was a boys' club in tailored suits, one that held power in place like wallpaper, beautiful to outsiders, suffocating if you lived inside it. The family fund was one of its pillars, a $12 million pool contributed to by everyone with a seat at the table. We used it to invest in real estate, startups, even to float cash for family vacations disguised as retreats. It was equal parts business and vanity. I had contributed $4.2 million to that fund, more than any other single family member, quietly, consistently, without asking for anything in return. Why? Because I believed in the vision, because I thought, foolishly, that loyalty would eventually earn me a voice. Spoiler, it didn't. Thanksgiving was the turning point, even if I didn't know it at the time. We had dinner at Uncle William's place, a mansion in Cape Cod with a view of the Atlantic, the kind of place you only see on postcards or real estate flyers for the top 1%. After dessert, he stood to raise a glass. To the Miller legacy, he said, beaming, where we all pull our weight and share the rewards equally. Everyone cheered. Even though my department had carried 62% of the company's profits that quarter, even though Jake had spent the entire month networking at conferences while I pulled double shifts handling client escalations, I smiled politely, clinked glasses. But I remember staring at the cranberry sauce on my plate and thinking, I need an exit strategy, now. Every month, we had a family meeting, always in the same boardroom, always with the same seating arrangement, my father at the head, Jake to his right, the rest of us orbiting around them like obedient moons. That day, I arrived early. My reports were printed, color-coded, every slide fine-tuned to explain my new client segmentation model, the kind of thing that could revolutionize how we approached high-net-worth portfolios. More return, less risk, data-driven, transparent, scalable. But when the meeting started, Jake strolled in, late coffee in one hand, phone in the other. Sorry, he said, not sounding sorry at all, was on the phone with the Donovans. The Donovans were my clients. I had looped him in for one call, just to help with a scheduling conflict. Now, he was standing there like he had landed them himself. My father grinned. No worries, son. Client relationships always come first. Why don't you brief us before Heather gets into her numbers? And so, Essie, for 20 full minutes. I watched Jake regurgitate half-understood pieces of my 6-month strategy, miss key risks, and skip over critical calculations. Everyone nodded like he was Moses coming down from the mountain. When it was finally my turn, I barely got 2 slides in before Uncle Richard interrupted. Heather, this seems overly complicated. Our clients come to us because they trust the Miller name, not algorithms. Aunt Patricia chimed in. Exactly. Simplicity is our strength. I kept my voice steady. Our recent client feedback surveys suggest otherwise. Most of them cite our advanced models as the reason they stay. And the market is shifting. If we don't adapt. Tap, tap, tap. My father's pen hit the table. 3 sharp taps. His version of a warning bell. Heather, theory is one thing, but we deal in practical realities. This isn't theory, I replied. I ran this with the Westfield account. They saw a 14% return last quarter. A moment of silence. Then my father leaned back.
You ran a new strategy, without authorization.
My heart thumped, but I didn't flinch. You told me to do what I thought best, with that account. It was underperforming. He waved a hand. That didn't mean upend the entire strategy. Jake jumped in. I've got an idea that might be simpler. No slides, no notes, just Jake, freewheeling with a sloppy remix of an idea I'd proposed last year, stripped of the actual elements that made it functional. At the end, my father clapped him on the back. Now that's the kind of thinking our clients appreciate. After the meeting, I followed my father into his office. He didn't look up from his phone. Dad, the strategy Jake presented today, it's risky. It leaves clients exposed. We need to... Heather, he sighed, you're too focused on details. This business is about relationships, not just spreadsheets. But the numbers are what protect those relationships. They're what make clients trust us. He finally looked at me. You know what your problem is. You've never trusted the way this family does things, always thinking your fancy degree makes you smarter than everyone else. I froze. That's when I realized he never saw me as his partner, only as a threat. As I left his office, I heard voices in the break room. Aunt Patricia, loud enough for me to hear. Heather's presentations give me a headache. It's like she's trying to make the rest of us feel stupid. Uncle Richard replied. She doesn't understand the culture. Never has. I stopped, cold. Every instinct told me to ignore it, to keep walking, but something inside me cracked. I turned back toward my office, closed the door, and just stood there. The sunlight through the window hit the framed certificate on my wall, Wharton. Summa cum laude. I stared at it. Then I opened the drawer, took out the small envelope I'd tucked away months ago. On the outside, I'd written one word. Contingency. Inside were the plans I'd hoped I'd never need. But now I knew exactly what I had to do. And when I made the first move, they wouldn't see it coming. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, a mug of cold tea beside me, untouched. My brownstone was quiet, the kind of silence that felt intentional, like the house knew I needed space to think. The email was still open on my screen. The subject line burned into my vision. Leadership retreat. Confirmed attendees. My name wasn't on the list. Jake was Uncle Richard, Aunt Patricia, my father, of course. Even Amanda, my cousin, stuck in the marketing department, was included. But me, the woman managing over $300 million in client assets, who doubled firm value in under a decade. Nothing. I should have expected it. But seeing it typed out so casually, like I didn't even exist, made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't shake. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, not to respond, just to do something, anything. Instead, I reached for the wooden box on the bookshelf behind me. It was small, scratched, and heavy. Inside was my grandfather's pocket watch. He used to wind it before every board meeting. He called it a ritual of respect for time, for preparation, for responsibility. I clicked it open, listening to the faint tick. Tick, tick, tick. It was the only thing in the room that sounded alive. The next morning, I put everything into motion. Step 1. Confirm the firewall between my personal and family investments. My lawyer, Nadine, sharp as a scalpel, discreet as a shadow, had helped me set it up years ago. Everything was bulletproof. My LLC, my registered patents, my client contracts, all with personal service clauses, my intellectual property filings, my startup equity, separate, legally and financially. Step 2, check the family fund agreement. Buried in the footnotes, Section 7.3 stated, any major contributor may withdraw partial or total contributions with 48 hours written notice. Perfect. Step 3. Rehearse the withdrawal process. I logged into the banking portal, ran through the steps without hitting submit, just to feel the weight of what I was preparing to do. Then I created a clean email, calm, formal, addressed to our family attorney and blind copied to a private backup account. The subject line read, Notice of Withdrawal, Family Fund per Section 7.3. But I wasn't done. I opened a blank document titled, To Dad, Not Sent. Then, for the first time in my adult life, I let the words pour out unfiltered. You always told me legacy matters more than ego. But the truth is, you never wanted a legacy. You wanted control. And I was too useful to leave, but too threatening to promote. You said this business was a family. But families don't exile their own with a text message. You raised me to be strong, then punished me when I became exactly that. I saved the letter, didn't send it, just folded it into the back of my journal and slid both into my safe right next to the pocket watch. That night, I slept. Not deeply, not peacefully, but enough. 3 days later, the WhatsApp message came. A new post from my father. After discussion among senior members, we've decided Heather should step away from client management. Clients have responded better to traditional methods. This is temporary, just a chance to realign with the Miller way. My phone lit up with reactions like wildfire. Uncle Richard smart move. Aunt Patricia endorsed. Jake, happy to help during the transition. My mother. We only want what's best. Nobody questioned it. Nobody asked why. Nobody stood up. Even Amanda stayed silent. That silence told me more than any word could. I waited 17 minutes. Then I replied, Understood. I'll respect that decision and withdraw from the family fund as well. Best of luck to everyone moving forward. Short, professional, and a bomb they wouldn't recognize until it had already gone off. I opened my laptop, logged into the fund. As one of the fund administrators and the largest single contributor, I had full access, no approval needed, just authentication, which I passed with a quick scan of my face. I initiated the withdrawal, $4.2 million in principal, $1.7 million in attributable gains, total $5.9 million. The system asked, Are you sure? Yes. I clicked confirm. Then I emailed our family attorney, citing Section 7.3, attached the formal withdrawal letter, CC'd my personal legal team for records. It was clean, legal, documented. The fund had a liquidity requirement, 50% of assets needed to remain liquid. My withdrawal wouldn't bounce, but it would trigger a notification to all fund administrators. Any transaction over $50,000 did that. And this was 118 times that threshold. I closed my laptop, turned off notifications, and poured myself a glass of Pinot Noir. The Boston skyline shimmered through my window, cold, distant, beautiful. It was almost poetic. I spent 8 years building their wealth, shielding their mistakes, biting my tongue, and they repaid me with a text and a shrug. But now they'd learn what it meant to underestimate someone who knew exactly how they worked. 7:38 p.m. Phone buzzed. 3 missed calls from Dad. Then 9. Then 19. Then 52. I ignored every single one. By the time the voicemails came in, his tone had shifted. Heather, there's a problem with the account. The bank's flagged it. I don't know what happened, call me. This isn't acceptable. I don't know what point you're trying to prove, but this isn't the way. Heather, the account's frozen. The entire fund. The bank needs your confirmation to release it. Please call me back. By 2:15 a.m., he sounded like a different man. Tired, small, uncertain. The man who once commanded entire rooms with a smirk was now begging through a voicemail. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just sat there, barefoot on the hardwood floor of my kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, watching the notifications roll in. This wasn't revenge. It was respect, bought and paid for. The next morning, I woke up early, showered, put on my favorite navy blue suit tailored, sharp, mine. I made coffee slowly, steadily.
Then, at exactly 7:00 a.m., I turned my phone back on.
64 missed calls, 127 texts, 43 WhatsApp messages, 17 voicemails. I let the coffee finish brewing before listening to a single one.
Then I texted my father. I'm honoring your decision. I've withdrawn my contribution per Section 7.3 of the fund agreement. The freeze is standard procedure. I've submitted my documentation.
Seconds later, my phone rang. I declined it. Then sent one final message.
I'll be available Monday at 9:00 a.m. at my home office. The address has been emailed to you.
Then I turned off all notifications, sat down with my coffee, and opened a blank document labeled Agenda Monday Meeting. Because now, I wasn't asking for a seat at their table.
I was setting my own.
But I wasn't prepared for what showed up at my door that Sunday night, Sunday evening, 8:47 p.m. I was organizing my notes for Monday's meeting, each agenda item highlighted, supporting documents cross-referenced, copies printed and arranged neatly on my dining table turned boardroom. The lighting was warm. My home was quiet. I had spent the day preparing everything down to the last detail: loan terms, asset protection clauses, valuation breakdowns, and even backup presentation slides on a flash drive tucked under the silver tray of pastries I'd ordered. My home office was spotless, not clinical, but intentional, a space of control. Then ping, my security system chimed. I glanced up at the monitor above my printer. The front camera flickered on, and there he was, my father, standing on my porch. No umbrella, no overcoat, just his blazer from Friday, now crumpled and open, shirt collar loose, his gray hair messier than I had ever seen it. He looked older, smaller, like someone who hadn't slept. I didn't move at first, just watched through the camera as he stood there under the porch light, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Then, without ringing the bell, he leaned forward and spoke softly, almost as if he wasn't sure I'd hear it. "Heather, the Henderson deal falls apart at 9 a.m. tomorrow if we don't have the funds. That's $3 million. Gone." I stepped toward the door, hesitated, then opened it halfway. We locked eyes, and for once, neither of us said anything sharp. He looked down, cleared his throat. "Look, I know you're angry." "Stop," I said. "This isn't about emotions anymore." He blinked. "Then what's it about?" "It's about business. You asked me to step away. I did. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. We'll talk as professionals. Bring whoever you want. I'm prepared." He opened his mouth, maybe to plead, maybe to posture, but something in my face must have told him not tonight. He gave a tight nod. 9 a.m. I closed the door quietly behind him. The next morning, I woke up early, even before my alarm. The city outside was still wrapped in mist. I brewed a pot of coffee Colombian, bold roast, while the house stirred to life. A quiet confidence settled over me. This was my home, my space, my ground. I slipped into my favorite navy blue suit, sharp shoulders, clean lines, tailored exactly to fit the woman I'd become, not the girl they remembered. Then I opened the safe, took out the manila folder with the finalized loan agreement. Next to it, my grandfather's pocket watch, still ticking, still solid. I placed it gently at the center of the table, where everyone would see it. A symbol of time, discipline, and control.
8:30 a.m. Ping. Security alert.
They were early. Through the camera, I watched them arrive like a formation: my father, Uncle Richard, Aunt Patricia, Jake, and Jonathan, the family attorney. Not a word was spoken as they rang the bell.
At precisely 8:59, I opened the door.
They entered slowly, eyes scanning the space. The brownstone was clean, modern, lined with original art. No clutter, no distractions, just intention. For the first time, they saw where I lived, and for the first time, I saw them register that I had built something they never imagined. "The dining room is this way," I said simply. They followed me like guests, not partners.
On the table, individual folders, pens, fresh coffee, a tray of scones.
And in the center, the pocket watch. My father's eyes paused on it. I said nothing. I took my place at the head of the table, the same place he always took at the office. He sat to my right. Aunt Patricia offered a brittle smile. Jake avoided my gaze. Uncle Richard looked already annoyed.
Jonathan, as always, remain neutral.
"Let's begin," I said. My father cleared his throat. "We're here to resolve this as quickly as possible. The Henderson deal is time-sensitive."
I'm aware, I replied, and I'm willing to help.
I opened my folder. "I'm prepared to wire $5 million this morning, enough to cover the down payment with margin." A collective sigh passed through the room. Until I continued. "But it will be structured as a personal loan. Standard market interest rate. 12-month term. Legal collateral. Signed agreement. Jonathan, the draft is in your folder." Their faces shifted instantly. Uncle Richard sat up. "A loan, you're charging your own family interest." "This is a business meeting," I said, voice steady. "And you made it clear 3 days ago that I was no longer part of family operations." Jake leaned forward, face tightening. "You're holding us hostage over hurt feelings." I turned to him.
I didn't blow up the Henderson deal. You did, when you removed the person managing over 60% of our firm's revenue without warning.
A beat passed.
You didn't even ask what I thought. You just deleted me.
Aunt Patricia's voice softened.
Heather, dear, maybe things weren't handled perfectly.
No, they weren't. And that matters. I tapped the folder gently. The offer is fair. The terms are market-aligned. Any other lender would charge 3 times the rate, and they wouldn't turn it around by noon. Jonathan looked up from the document. "She's right. It's an extremely favorable proposal given the timeline." My father sat back, silent. I could see the war in his head, pride versus logic. Finally, he spoke. "Fine. Draw up the loan agreement." But then he added, "And after this, we expect you to reinvest in the fund, resume your role, rejoin the company under new leadership terms." I shook my head. "That's not on the table today." His brow furrowed. "Why not?" "Because this loan is a transaction, not a reconciliation." The room chilled again. "My future involvement in Miller Financial will require a separate negotiation, under new terms. And this time, I'm not asking for a seat. I'm building my own table." Silence. A long, loaded pause. Then Jonathan cleared his throat. "We can finalize the loan in an hour." They all nodded stiffly, resentfully, but they nodded. Except for Jake. He scoffed, leaning back with a smirk. "Let's be real. You need the Miller name as much as we need your number crunching. Where are you going to go?" "Set up shop in your living room." That was the moment. The moment I had prepared for. I picked up the small remote and clicked. Behind me, the television came to life.
Funny you ask, I said, turning as the screen lit up.
Slide 1 Heather Miller, Capital Management logo, sharp, modern, professional. I've been running my own firm for the past 4 years. Click. Slide 2 Client Returns, 17% average growth versus 9% at Miller Financial. Click. Slide 3 List of registered patents, 7, all tied to my name. Click. Slide 4 Client Roster, 27 high net worth individuals, $400 million under management. Click. Slide 5 client contracts, 17 of Miller Financial's accounts, each with a personal service clause tied to me. If I walk, I said, those accounts walk with me.
Jake's jaw tightened.
Uncle Richard turned pale. Aunt Patricia looked genuinely stunned. My father just stared. No smirk, no rebuttal. Just silence. This wasn't revenge, I said softly. This was insurance. Because I knew one day you'd try to cut me out of something I built. I closed the folder. You wanted to know where I was going. I already went. And just as I was about to hand Jonathan the final signed page, my phone buzzed. A message popped up on the screen. From Amanda. Just heard what you did. I'm proud of you. Can we talk soon? I smiled slightly, then looked back at the room. Any other questions before we finalize the transfer? Because they weren't just reacting to a bold move anymore. They were realizing they weren't in charge anymore. And what I was about to offer next would flip the entire family structure on its head. No one moved. The room had gone completely still, like someone had pulled the oxygen out of it. My father sat in stunned silence. Jake's face was locked in some mix of fury and disbelief. His fists clenched against the table like he could crush the paperwork into submission. Aunt Patricia's jaw worked, but no sound came. Only Jonathan, the attorney, looked mildly impressed, as if a piece of the puzzle had finally clicked into place. I leaned forward, calm, focused. Now that the Henderson funds are resolved, I said, let's talk about what happens next. I handed Jonathan a second document. This one labeled Contingency Proposal. I had prepared it months ago, updated it the night before, and printed 5 fresh copies that morning. Each person received one. My father glanced at it, then back at me.
Heather, you want to create a new division?
Yes, a new branch under the Miller Financial umbrella, but independently operated. I proposed the name Miller Capital Management.
And you're what's CEO of that division?
Not just CEO, president, full decision-making authority, separate compensation, tied directly to performance. Uncle Richard let out a choked laugh. You can't be serious. You want us to just hand you the keys to a new kingdom? No, I said. I already built the kingdom. I'm offering to attach it to yours. I let that settle for a beat. Then I turned back to my father. You asked earlier where I would go. The truth is, I've already gone. But I'm giving you the option to evolve instead of being left behind. I could feel the tension in the room thickening. The air almost vibrated with unspoken words, hurt egos, and scrambling mental math. What if we say yes? What if we say no? What if she walks? My father finally broke the silence. Let's say we consider this. What about the family fund? Will you reinvest? I nodded. Yes, but under new terms. Voting power proportional to contribution. No more equal say for people who do nothing. Aunt Patricia shifted sharply. Excuse me. You've never worked a single day in the business, I said, meeting her eyes directly. Yet you vote on strategy like you've earned it. That ends. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I continued. Here's the outline. I will reallocate my assets into Miller Capital Management and merge my private firm under the new division. Client contracts will stay intact. Intellectual property stays in my name. You gain access to $400 million in assets under management, exclusive patents, and a proven model. And in return, Jonathan asked, I want autonomy, no interference. You get results, you don't get control. Jake finally found his voice. This is insane. You're trying to hijack the family business. No, Jake. I'm trying to stop the family business from collapsing under its own arrogance. You've always thought you were better than us. I stared at him. No, I've always worked harder than you. That's not the same thing. My father glanced down at the watch in the center of the table. The pocket watch. His father's. He looked at it as though it might start ticking louder, might offer him a clear answer. Then he looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw something unfamiliar in his face. Respect. We'll need time to review everything, he said slowly, and draft our counterproposals. You have 1 week? Uncle Richard bristled. You're not in a position to dictate timelines. Yes, I am. I just loaned you $5 million under terms you couldn't get anywhere else. And I can walk away tomorrow with $230 million in client assets. I leaned back. So yes, I am in a position to dictate. The meeting ended not with shouting, but with quiet defeat. They didn't argue further. They didn't storm out. They just packed their papers and left, eyes down, as if they'd attended a funeral for the version of the family they thought they still controlled. When they were gone, I sat in the silence of my dining room, staring at the empty seats, the coffee cups, the fingerprints on the glass. Then I slid the pocket watch back into its velvet pouch. I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady, like something inside me had locked into place. That night, Amanda texted again. Can we talk tomorrow? I think I'm ready to do what you did. We met for coffee the next morning at a quiet corner cafe in Cambridge. She wore no makeup, hair in a loose braid, eyes tired but alive. I've been lying to myself for years, she admitted. They put me in marketing because it was less pressure. But really, it was because I was too much for them, too ambitious, too outspoken, just like you. I let her talk. I didn't give advice, just listened. She pulled out a sketch pad, something I hadn't seen since we were teenagers. I applied to an architecture firm. My portfolio's ready. I haven't told the family. Good, I said. I want to leave, but I also want to build something real. Then do both. She looked up at me. Would you ever invest in something outside finance? I smiled. Send me your pitch. That same day, I received a call from Jonathan. Heather, he said, they're taking the offer seriously. Your father wants to propose a restructuring. They're even considering giving up the equal vote model in the fund. When do they want to meet? End of the month. Neutral location. I picked the venue. Understood. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of legal documents, client meetings, and transition plans. I didn't see my father. I didn't hear from Jake. But I did hear from clients. One by one, they reached out to say they'd heard whispers about changes coming. Every single one said the same thing. Where you go, we go. Sunday evening, one day before the final meeting, I returned home and found something unexpected in my mailbox. A letter, handwritten, from my mother. I opened it slowly. Her script was careful, elegant. Heather, I've spent most of my life keeping quiet. That was what women did in our world, stand beside the men, not in front of them. I didn't speak up for you when I should have, and for that I'm sorry. I see you now, all of you. There was no plea, no manipulation, just acknowledgement. And for the first time in years, I cried. Not from pain, but from release. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my suit. The same navy blue one I'd worn the day I stared down the family. Same fit, same fabric. But I wasn't the same woman. 8:45 a.m. I arrived at the restaurant early, private room reserved, round table set. I'd specifically requested it to eliminate hierarchy. This wouldn't be a boardroom power play. This would be negotiation, on equal ground. And as I laid out the documents one by one, arranging the folders around the table, I took one final breath. Just as the door opened, they had arrived. All of them. But this time, 2 faces were new. One of them was Amanda. The other was the last person I expected. And what he said changed everything. The door creaked open. My eyes went first to Amanda, standing taller than I'd ever seen her, wearing a black blazer over a cream blouse, hair pulled back with quiet intention. Then to the figure behind her. My mother? Diana Miller. She hadn't attended a single business meeting in over 15 years. Not one. Her place was always behind the scenes, smiling in the family portraits, organizing charity events, making sure the Miller brand remained perfectly pressed and presentable. And now, here she was, walking into a private business negotiation in heels and pearls like it was a dinner party. Jake walked in next, arms crossed, eyes already narrow. Uncle Richard followed, glancing warily around the room. Aunt Patricia, not even bothering to hide the frown. Then came my father. But this time, he didn't walk in like a king. He paused for half a beat at the threshold, then stepped forward with measured restraint, carrying nothing but a folder and what looked suspiciously like humility. I gestured to the chairs.
Thank you all for coming. Let's begin.
The table was round by design. No one at the head, no one above anyone else. Amanda sat to my left, silent but alert. My mother took the seat beside her, folding her hands gently in front of her as if trying not to wrinkle the moment. I handed out updated proposal packets, each tabbed by category ownership, autonomy, IP protections, succession. This wasn't a confrontation. This was a contract. My father cleared his throat. We've had a lot of internal discussions since the last meeting, he began, voice even but cautious. And we've come to a proposal we believe reflects a new phase for the business. He nodded to Jonathan, who began distributing their documents. I scanned the cover proposal for organizational restructure, Miller Financial Group. A title that, just a month ago, would have been unthinkable. He continued. We're proposing the creation of a new division, Miller Capital Management, as you outlined. You'll serve as president and CEO, with full operational autonomy and a separate profit-sharing model. I looked up. Equity stake. 30%, Jonathan answered, with an option to increase to 51 over a 3-year performance period. I paused. That was higher than I expected, more generous than I'd even requested. Family fund governance, I asked. Uncle Richard jumped in, annoyed. We've agreed to change the voting structure. Contributions will now determine vote weight. Aunt Patricia added, even if we don't agree with all the implications. I smiled faintly. That clause alone meant she was going from 1 vote to nearly none. Progress. I kept flipping. Then I found it buried halfway through the document. You're proposing a merger, I said slowly. Jonathan nodded. Your current firm and its clients would be absorbed into the new division, but your intellectual property remains in your name. The clients retain their personal service clauses. Nothing changes on their end. My father leaned in. This is more than a power shift. Heather, it's a new legacy, one we build together. My eyes flicked to Amanda, then to my mother. Then I asked the one question no one expected. What happens after you step down? Silence. A long one. Then my mother spoke. We're proposing a merit-based succession plan. Across all divisions. No more default inheritance. No more handshakes in dark rooms. It hit me like a subtle earthquake, small, but world-shifting. My mother, saying this, on record. For a moment, the teenage version of me, the one who used to shrink under her quiet smiles and whispered warnings about being too much, rose up in disbelief. But this wasn't that version of her anymore. And it wasn't that version of me either. Jake scoffed. Let's be real. You've already won. Why are we still negotiating? Because this isn't about revenge, I replied. It's about building something better. For me, for Amanda, for every woman in this family who's been told to make herself smaller so a man could feel taller. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It landed like a gavel. Amanda reached under the table and gave my hand a quick squeeze. I didn't look at her, but I squeezed back. We continued reviewing terms, one line at a time, No shouting, no interruptions, just steady, uncomfortable progress. And then when everything seemed aligned, my father did something I didn't expect. He took something out of his breast pocket and slid it toward me. A photo. Faded, framed, black and white. My grandfather, standing in front of the original Miller Financial Building in 1954. A young man in a wool suit, holding the same pocket watch I now kept in my safe. He built this for survival, my father said quietly. I tried to preserve it. You made it grow. He looked down, and I see that now. For the first time in weeks, I felt something soften in my chest. Not forgiveness, but maybe the beginning of understanding. We signed the agreements. I transferred my clients under the new division, ensuring smooth continuity. The loan was restructured as equity. Miller Capital Management was born. I didn't say anything flashy, didn't pop champagne or post some dramatic victory speech on LinkedIn. I just walked out of that room, Amanda by my side, and breathed. Free, for real this time. The following months passed in a blur of paperwork, onboarding, and strategy launches. My team grew, my systems scaled. My name was no longer just on business cards, but on contracts, patents, and headlines. Miller Legacy, reimagined by next-gen leader Heather Miller, Boston's financial scene, disrupted by quiet powerhouse. Clients came flooding in, not for the name, but for the woman behind it. Amanda resigned from her marketing position that fall and launched her own design studio. I was her first investor. You gave me the playbook, she said over coffee. Now I get to build the game. My mother came by unannounced one Saturday. She brought a tin of her signature apple pie, the one she used to serve at client dinners back when a woman's influence was expected to be soft, edible, and silent. She handed me a folded piece of paper.
Another letter. This one, she said, is for your daughter, if you ever have one. I didn't open it, not yet.
But I placed it in the same drawer as the unsent letter I'd once written my father.
One day, I'll let them sit side by side.
A year passed. Then one evening, nearly 12 months to the day of the WhatsApp exile, my father and I found ourselves in the conference room late after hours, just the two of us. He was looking at the latest quarterly reports. Profits up, retention at an all-time high, client satisfaction through the roof. He tapped the numbers on the page. You've outperformed every division. I didn't say anything. Then he looked at me, and for once, not as his daughter, just as a peer. Your grandfather said something to me once, he said, back when he handed me the reins. He said the best legacy isn't preservation, it's evolution. I didn't understand it then. He looked at me, but I do now. And just as he said that, my phone buzzed. A message. From a client I hadn't heard from in years. One I never thought would reach back out. And what he offered would change the future of Miller Capital forever. The message was from Lauren Strauss. The Lauren Strauss. She hadn't spoken to me since she ghosted our account transition 6 years ago, leaving behind a cryptic voicemail about family conflicts and needing distance. But here she was, back in my inbox, asking for a lunch meeting. Her family ran one of the largest philanthropic foundations on the East Coast. Old money, old rules, old grudges. Her reaching out now, after everything that had happened with my family's implosion, wasn't just surprising. It was strategic. I met her at a quiet bistro tucked off Boylston Street, one of those places where the napkins are too thick to fold, and the servers never write anything down. Lauren looked the same sharp-angled elegance, that constant air of knowing more than she says. But there was something different in her eyes now. Not coldness, curiosity. I watched it all, she said, sipping her water. The way you flipped the board structure. The press you managed to get without sounding like you were trying to get it. Brilliant. I raised an eyebrow.
You called me here to compliment me.
She leaned in. I want to move my foundation's endowment under your division. Quietly. Full discretion. My fork froze midair. This wasn't just a big client. It was the client. The one that could shift the perception of Miller Capital from restructured family firm to institutional powerhouse. But I knew Lauren didn't move without layers. Why now? She didn't blink. Because I need someone who understands what it's like to be underestimated and still win. That hit deeper than she realized. We shook hands. No lawyers. No hesitation. The onboarding took 3 weeks. And I kept it silent. Even Amanda didn't know. I wanted the foundation listed in the next quarterly report, like a drop of ink in still water, subtle at first, but spreading. And it worked. Within days of the news breaking, we started receiving cold inquiries from clients who had never returned calls before. My assistant had to turn off the direct scheduling link to stop the flood. And then came the inevitable. A call from my father. He asked to meet alone, not at the office, at the house. The Miller estate. I hadn't been there since the family intervention when they stripped me from the group chat like I was some virus infecting their perfect facade. I almost said no. But I went. For closure. The house smelled the same. Lemon oil, fresh lilies, the faint trace of cedar from the old paneling. My father stood by the grand piano in the front room, his posture less commanding now, more still. He didn't speak right away. Then finally, "I thought we were done competing," he said, voice low, "that we'd found peace." I nodded. "We have, but peace isn't silence." "You didn't need to go that far." "No," I said. "I needed to go that high." He closed his eyes, as if that line cost him something. Then he turned and walked toward the mantel, picked up a photo of me at age 7, gap-toothed, proudly holding a certificate from the town science fair. He stared at it like he was trying to decode the girl in the picture. "You were always going to outrun us," he said. "We just didn't want to admit it." And then finally, he looked at me. "I'm proud of you." I didn't cry, but my fingers curled into my palms behind my back, tight enough to leave crescent moons I'd find later in the shower. Because for a long time, I thought I'd die before I ever heard those words. A month later, I launched something new. A program. Financial Futures, we called it. Free workshops for women aging out of foster care, single moms re-entering the workforce, daughters who had been shut out of family business conversations because they didn't wear a suit at Sunday dinners. Amanda helped me brand it. The logo was a stylized pocket watch, cut in half the past on one side, a rising sun on the other. And yes, it was the same pocket watch my grandfather passed down. I donated the real one to the Boston Museum of Industry. Not because I was done with it, but because I didn't need to hold it anymore. Let others see it. Let others draw from it. I was building my own heirlooms now. I still keep a folder labeled Plan B on my laptop. It's encrypted, clean, quiet. Not because I expect betrayal, but because I know the cost of pretending it won't come. That folder holds all my contingency steps, transfer clauses, trust split options, pre-signed resignation from board positions if integrity is compromised. Not because I'm paranoid, because I'm prepared. The world teaches women to hope for peace. I teach women to plan for war and build peace anyway. Some nights I sit on my porch with Amanda and just watch the street go quiet. No crisis, no plot. Just the hum of a life rebuilt. We talk about everything now, future kids. Travel, art, bad coffee. One night, she pulled out a tattered notebook. "I found this in storage," she said. "Remember when we wrote dream careers in high school?" She flipped to my page. "Own a firm. Not Dad's. Mine." I laughed. She handed me a Sharpie. I crossed it out and wrote underneath, "Build a legacy that outlasts the pain." To anyone watching this right now, Here's what I'll say. If your family tells you you're too loud, too ambitious, too complicated, too much, they're probably scared of who you'll become when you stop trying to be small enough for their comfort. Be too much. Be more than what they can control. Don't just reclaim your seat at the table. Build your own table. Invite others. Then burn the blueprint so they can't shrink it again. And if you're wondering whether I ever forgave them, let's just say, forgiveness isn't always a reunion. Sometimes it's a release, and I finally let go. Thanks for sticking with me all the way through this story. If it hit something inside you, drop a comment, share your story, or just say I'm still here. Because I am too. Still here. And finally, whole. Have you ever felt pushed out of something you helped build? Drop a still here in the comments if you're reclaiming your voice. And if this story reminded you of someone, share it with them. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications because next week, we're going even deeper.